You're listening to the FYI podcasts. I'm Josiah Canale.
I'm Mike Canale.
We're your hosts, and thanks so much for taking time to join us on the journey. At FYI, we talk about all things faith, life, and adulting.
Right.
And right off the top, we just want to shout out some of the people who have left us ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts. One of them is Caleb Paschke. Caleb, he goes, absolutely amazing. Cannot wait for the upcoming episodes. The hosts are incredible and I have so much knowledge. Love the ability to submit questions, and I'm excited to see who the speakers that are brought on will be. Definitely worth the listen.
Here
So,
we go.
Caleb,
No pressure, right?
he is down at
Baylor
University, and so grateful for you. And then let's do one more. College Student 99 said, life-changing, so thrilled for the truth that is about to be poured out in this podcast. God is moving through this podcast in the lives of college students, and we believe
Love
it.
it.
If you believe it, man, type into the chat on YouTube, amen. We're excited for today.
That's right. We just want to welcome you back. We are actually in a money and finance mini-series. Now, just say right away, we are not your financial advisors. But
Disclaimer.
We will share some things that we've learned throughout the years, and hopefully it can help you in the season that you're in, whether you are a college student living on a college campus, whether you're living in the dorms, you're trying to figure out roommates and people eating your food in your fridge. Hey, that's a real life thing. And maybe you are in your career and you're just trying to navigate how to put together a budget, which we talked about last week. So check that out if you want to learn how to put together a budget and see the budget breakdown of your personal spending habits, because we all have them, whether we realize it or not.
Yes.
It could be mom and dad's credit card, or it could be our own. And when it's our own, it always hurts a little more, doesn't it? We realize our pockets aren't as deep as we want them to be. So we are so thrilled to be back. Josiah, do you have a verse for us to kick it off?
Yeah, today's verse of the day
Ooh, verse of the day. All right.
comes from the Sermon on the Mount. It's red letter text, so this is Jesus speaking to his disciples, his followers, and the crowds. And this is considered part of the greatest sermon ever preached.
Let's hear it.
And what's interesting is Jesus talks about our money. He talks about our finances. This is what he says. Matthew 6, verse 21 says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And so he's teaching, and he says, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, because moths and varmints and thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where no varmint can destroy, thieves can't break in and steal. And then he just talks about nobody can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other. So it is, you cannot serve both God and money. So the goal is to serve God with our money, and that's what we want to talk about today.
Yeah. So our question of the day is, where's it at, Josiah? Right here. Wow. A lot of people are asking similar questions. So we try to streamline what those questions are. So this is what it says. How to transition from a college life to living independently post-college. So how do we do that? How do we probably get out of the college mindset into the world, more or less, right? And how do we do that? How we handle money as a single person, we talked about a little bit last week, obviously impacts our future, whether it's our future selves, our future relationships, our future marriage, our future
Families,
children.
generations.
Yes,
Oh my gosh.
and we all have come from a family tree, and what kind of family tree are we growing and staying attached to, and what do we want to see continue, and what do we need to kind of harness in on? And one of those things can be the addiction of spending money or living outside of the means that our bank accounts actually have in them, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to just pinpoint that question. And when it comes to this, sometimes we forget, right? We forget how grateful we are for our parents, or maybe the people who've taken us in, grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, whoever your guardian is. We often forget this. But when you're in college, Josiah, we made a little list here because we don't want to miss anything. Because when you're in a college with a 2-year, 4-year, there's some package bundle deals that are included in your schooling, quote unquote, that you might not know about, that you're paying for, that maybe you're not utilizing, or that you're paying for and you really don't realize how much you are eating when you go through that line at school, right?
Yeah.
I went to a 4-year school, university. I saw those football players play, and they were on a full ride scholarship, so it was a free-for-all. So I know what it's like to see somebody go to town on free food. So, Josiah, what are some of those components that maybe the listener, if they're in that college age and stage, what do they need to be gearing up for? But maybe if they're in that last couple years or semester, that they can really like take into consideration and hone in on, just in their mindset to prepare themselves.
I would think almost in terms of columns or lists, and one is the college column,
Okay.
and the other is the
Career?
after the career column. Like once you launch out, once you're in adulting, and you might find yourself in either column today, but both are going to be helpful. When you're in college, your meal plan, baby, you just said it, your gym membership, your tuition, your car, your dorm or housing, your rent, going out, your car insurance can be on your parents' policy still. Your health insurance until you're 26 years of age can be on your parents' health insurance. You're most likely on a family share plan or a family plan for your cell phone. If you do go on vacation, it's likely with your family or paid for by your family. And then there's this idea of coming of age. And experts squabble. Social scientists have debates about like, what's the age of coming to age? And I'm going to pick a number, not that I picked, but that everyone seems to agree on as 26.
It's not 18. It's not 21.
Right.
It's been 26. And it's kind of evolved and pushed back. So 26 seems to be the number on what levels here.
Well, look at this. As recent as Obamacare or even before that, by the time you're 26 or really up until you're 26, you can be on your parents' health insurance.
Right.
26, boom, see ya. You've got to find health
Figure it
insurance from your employer or from, your state or from really even maybe a cost sharing plan. But you can no longer be on your mom and dad's health insurance. It's like the federal government picked this and they are kicking you out of the nest. And the airlines really agree. If you were a dependent and your parents, let's say, were a flight attendant or an airline pilot or maybe a mechanic, and they worked for the airlines and you got that flight benefit, those benefits go away. You are no longer a dependent at age what?
26.
26.
And I'd also say to rent a car. Isn't renting a car at 26 right now?
25.
25,
Yep, 25,
26,
you can rent a car.
You're hitting that threshold of numbers.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I just say this, whether you're 18, 28, or beyond, the coming of age is somewhat agreed upon. By 25, you're going to need to figure some things out. And that's the purpose of today's conversation. And in order to get there, I'm just curious, from the listener, can you let us know, just by telling us, your family of origin, when you were growing up, did your family openly talk about money, yes or no? And do you want to share? Are you willing to? I know it's a personal question.
Yeah, I would say that my family is very open about finances. I think I have generous parents, which kind of lend itself to be both spenders. But I think my mom's a secret saver. So if she has something intact of just like, oh, I want to remodel the flooring of the upstairs, I'm going to pocket this away. So she does have the rainy day mindset. But when it comes to Christmas, there is no budget. It's like, I'm going to bless everybody and anybody who I come across, which isn't necessarily bad when it comes down to the condition of her heart, but it can come down bad to budgeting in the books on, the number side of things. So we talked openly about it, and I'd say we weren't like, we're going to put $10,000 away here. And we're like, hey, we have enough money to go on vacation. So they didn't necessarily talk like numbers, but we knew what was feasible as children. When we go to the grocery store, you can pick out one cereal. You can pick out one treat. It is your choice, but you're going to have to share with your sibling, but you get to choose. So I would say for the most part, we were pretty open. I think they still are.
Yeah. I think my experience in upbringing is like my grandparents got us a Campbell's tomato soup jar that had a coin slot in it. It was almost like a piggy bank, but it was like a soup bank or something. And so anyway, like we learned from our grandparents on both sides, and then my parents really taught us the value of a dollar, the value of giving in BGMC. If any of you grew up in kids' church, like I remember the Buddy Barrel and filling it up with coins and bringing it to church, or buying the M&M canister at Feed My Starving Children and bringing it back full of quarters, learning to give and learning to save. My parents definitely taught us about money and future and the importance of savings. And I also think at the same times, they would budget. I remember from a young age, they had this little notebook that was on the counter that had like groceries and mortgage. And so I knew, like, okay, my parents are thinking about money.
They're logging it,
Yeah,
obviously.
but it wasn't so much a family conversation. It was more like one of those, mom and dad would go downstairs, shut the door, and they would have conversations about money. And that's fine. Like, but that was my experience,
Right.
is that they were having conversations, and we didn't necessarily know the inner workings or details, which is totally fine. That's
Right.
just how I experienced it anyway.
Well, I think it's a good indicator that kids are not designed to be the undertakers of the burden of the
Wow.
financial decisions our parents
good.
have made. So I just want to say right off the bat, if you were raised in a family where you felt like you needed to provide at age 14 and you felt like you were the man of the house, like, I'm sorry that that was your situation and what you were placed in under, and how you felt like it was your job to do that. Like, no 10, 12, 14-year-old should have to carry that burden. So just, if you're listening and that's your story, it may be so different than ours, but you probably learned something that we've never learned, that you'd be able to bring something to this conversation that we would never even like think of, because that wasn't our upbringing. So just being mindful that as a listener, you are coming from a different country, city, location, inner city, downtown. Maybe you're in the, I don't know, mission field, missions kid, and there's just different conversations when it comes to money and responsibilities, whether we chose them for ourselves as kids or young adults or not.
Yeah.
Whether the government helped us, we are on food stamps, or whether we got grants or loans or scholarships through our accolades or through sports to be on the college campuses we are or were at some point. But to know that money, we just want to say that money is a tool that we want to see you succeed in. It is a tool that you can put in your toolbox and that you can hopefully bless and help people along the way, as well as being successful, quote unquote, when it comes to the ability to give and to save and to live on the rest. So
I love it.
yeah.
I love it. And there's going to be 7 things. These aren't the only
Ooh.
things, by the way, but 7 things that kind of answer this question, back to the beginning, back to the basics of how do I transition
Right.
from living the college money mindset to the career money mindset. Like, how do I function as an adult in the real world and handle finances in a way that glorifies God and also works? And I'll kick us off with number
Yeah,
1.
you
Is
got
that
number
okay?
one. You got
The
it.
first question is, like, where do I live? And a lot of you, your heart fluttered a little bit because you're about to graduate and you might have a move in your future out of the dorms into an apartment or a townhouse or a house. And so then there's follow-up questions like, what city do I rent? Is there a move involved? Like, is it across the city? Is it across the state? Across the country? Is it across the globe? And then the third kind of question is under where I live is, do I rent or do I buy? Is there roommates in the situation or is there not? But where we live is a huge part of our career, finances, future, church, community, everything.
Well, I think with that, you need to, what makes sense for you in the season that you're in. I mean, I was 27 years old and I went back to having roommates because I moved to the city and I needed to have roommates in order to survive, essentially, of going to school
Higher rent.
full-time, working part-time, and figuring out what God had for me. So it's never bad to have roommates, but it is bad when you try to move out and plant yourself somewhere else where you can't afford $2,400 a month on your own. Like, so being mindful of how you live and just what you actually need in that process.
So good.
So where you live is number 1. 2 is, what job am I going to have? And that's like, what did you get your degree in? Like, what is the work itself that you're going to be doing? How does the work align with your values? Do you have values and morals? And if you do, try to live out your faith in those settings. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? Are you going to go out to supper every single night when the coworkers ask you and you're trying to make friends and you move to a new city? Like, you need to know your boundaries of your spending habits. And just because you go out for supper doesn't mean that you need to order the most expensive thing on the menu. I would still get the appetizers. I say, hey, the boneless wings, $7.99. Yep, that's me. You know, like, I'm still that person, and we can afford a $10 meal, whatever. McDonald's, right? And I think sometimes we forget, how much is your salary? When you get into a job and a situation, I'd figure out, what are your benefits? Do you have PTO?
That's paid time off, by the
Yep.
way.
Do you
Vacation.
have a 501?
Oh, 401.
401k matching, where if you put in X amount of dollars or percentage, is your employer going to match that as well? Insurance, do they have health insurance? Is it 80/20, 40/60, 30/70? Like, what kind of insurance coverage? Is it eye, dental, health? Is it just health?
Hospitalization.
Yes, and just to know all those different terms, and don't be afraid to ask. Be like, here's my favorite question, and I think it's helped me. So if I'm in a doctor's office or if I'm in a room where I don't know what I should be asking, I say, what should I be asking you that I'm not asking?
It's a great question.
So if I take our girls to the doctor, I was like, okay, I know X, Y, and Z, but what should I be asking you that I'm not? Like, what do I need to be aware of that I may be oblivious to? Because you're the professional here. So when you're in those interviews for that job, know what you're getting yourself into. Is there a time commitment? Is it a 1 year, 2 year, 4 year? Are you contracted? Do they have the right to say, hey, you're going to work on this construction site, but in 3 months we're going to reevaluate and we're going to send you down to Florida? Are you willing to say, yes, I'm in for a move? And if you are, great. So when you start looking at what job am I going to have or have I been interviewing for, be mindful of the questions that you ask, because sometimes vacation, you might get 2 days vacation the first 2 to 4 years, depending what you're doing and where you're at. Other places might be, you get 2 weeks, no question.
Yep.
So am I up for a raise? Is there room for wiggle room of this? So asking those hard questions and knowing what to ask, I think, is essential. But Josiah?
And I have a quick story, and I'll
okay.
keep it short, but I think this is a good
Okay.
life lesson. It's for somebody out there because it was for us. I remember when we got married, it was June 30th, 2017. And it was like my last day in the office before our wedding, which was like on a Friday night or Saturday night, I forget. Friday night. And so it was like Thursday was my last day in the office, and I filled out the paperwork and I submitted it, and we dated it. And the HR person with benefits, or the coordinator for insurance, we got, because you're like, when you get married is one of those things. If you start a new job, you can apply for health insurance. If you get married, there's certain life events, like a child, there's certain life events where you can like re-enroll in health insurance. And I remember I got Micah on. We come back from the honeymoon and she is in the ER in a world of hurt, had kidney stones. And I then got the bill, and it was like, I don't know, it might have been like $6,000 or something. It was a lot of money. It was more money than we had or could come up with at all. And I remember like being stressed at work. And then I just went next door. My office was right next to, at the job I had at the time, the HR person. And first, she gave me a hug. And second, she said, you should have told me, because this is not a bill. This is like your itemized statement of like how much it cost, but this is covered by our insurance.
Right.
And then she showed me how to submit the paperwork and everything, but I'd never done it, even though I had worked there for several years.
Right.
But I just, like, I learned a life lesson to ask questions. Don't sweat it. Don't stress out. And I think that was for somebody out there also. Like, if you get married, get on the policy as quickly as you can. And then
And don't be afraid by terminology. Like, you'll hear the word deductible, principal, like, I don't know, first, second, third, like, you're getting things that are submitted to you. You're like, what? I have to pay this? It's like, no, it's just the itemized bill. It's saying, here's the breakdown. So if you don't understand something, don't be afraid to ask and look stupid. I always say, hey, this may be a stupid question, but fill in the blank. So take that approach. It helps every time.
It's great. Back to our list of 7 things that kind of the career mindset. Third thing is meal prepping and planning. And there's no more meal plan. There's no more cafeteria. So are you going to grocery shop? Like, that's a skill, a life lesson to learn, and maybe you learned it. Cooking. I know that for me, if I'm cooking, it's going to be the same few items. But thankfully, we're a team, and we're great at short order chefing. And Micah brings a lot to the table.
If you want a good smoothie, he's your guy.
It's like delightful smoothies. And then eating out, too, as more of a privilege than a habit, right?
Oh, that's good, yeah.
And so meal prepping and planning. And then, that's the third thing.
Well, I think the fourth thing is some expenses actually go away, whereas some kick into gear. And some of those that kick into gear are what, Josiah? Are we talking like
Oh my gosh. Like,
Take us there quick.
yeah, I think the things that kick into gear are like, well, you're going to have to start paying for rent. Also, 6 months, you got, okay, you don't have to pay your student loans, but if you have them, after 6 months, you got to figure out how to start paying them because the interest start kicks in.
Right, and I would even say with the renting of a place, sometimes they ask for the first month's rent and the last month's rent.
The
So that
deposit.
might be the big kick in the shorts of like, say you're paying $1,200 a month, they may ask $2,400 up front, and that's like kind of like that bundle of money that's like, hey, if there's a hole in the wall, if this is all broken down, you're not going to get this pool of money back. So I mean, just even being mindful of that is essential, and looking at your college loans, when do they kick into gear?
Yep.
And what does that mean? How can I get that set up? If you buy a vehicle, or if you have monthly payments for a vehicle, and if you're paying off a credit card, looking at your principal, and some of these things are naturally happening as you're on a college campus. But
Yep.
I would say my parents, when I turned 18, they were not on my bank account anymore. I was on my own. I had my debit card, my credit card, my savings account all in the same place, and I needed to understand the terminology and understand everything. So I would say be mindful of who's on your accounts as you transition into adulting, quote unquote, or your next age and stage of life. So get mom and dad off your account if you're engaged, because they may still have access to things that you didn't even know have access to.
Yeah.
So, and change your mailing address. Forward your mail to your home address, right?
It's good.
It's all these little things.
It's good.
Ah!
And, you know, like, I had an arrangement with my folks, especially my dad, because I lived at home through college. And he and I had this arrangement, like, you can live at home for free as long as you're in college. And I was about to move out, and I had an amazing opportunity to go through to grad school. And so, like, I was literally looking at places, looking at roommates, and then I was like, hold on, I could go. My first class is paid for, second class is half off, and then the other classes, the rest of the degree are all like partial scholarship. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think this is the times now. And I talked to my dad. So I ended up, I think, moving out at more like age 25 than the original plan of 22, 23, because I went back for 2.5, 3 years of grad school.
But then we got engaged.
Yep.
So then we
Yep.
got engaged.
And
they
then it
let
was
you stay there because
for
like,
a couple months
Yeah.
until we were only engaged for like 90, maybe 100 days. And
Yeah,
then
3 months, yeah.
then we moved into an apartment. And so number 5,
oh, sorry. Here
number
we go.
5, I was just sharing about our life. But number 5 is like, so wait, going to the doctor costs how much? A massage isn't covered by insurance? Like chiropractic, like what? So it's kind of that we talked about some expenses actually go away. Some expenses actually kick in.
And number 6 is, hey, I'm 26. Maybe you're listening today and you literally are 26 and you're like realizing like, oh my gosh, I really appreciate my mom and dad. So the thing is, should I really start saving for retirement? I know Josiah's story. He wanted to start saving when he was 16 years old for retirement, opening up all these crazy retirement accounts. Hey, guess what? I was 30 and I still wasn't thinking about that because I was thinking about how was I going to live downtown, finish paying off my school, get married, change my name, everything else, right?
Yep.
So I think just being mindful of like when you are employed through an employer or you're putting money towards your future, it's not somebody else's future. It's your responsibility to take care of your future when it comes to your retirement and your future marriage and retirement of what that is and looks like. So knowing who are your financial advisors, who are the HR people in the workplace of which you're working, whether it's X, Y, and Z, who knows, work across the world, but you should really start saving for your retirement now. And some people say, well, by the time I get there, is the retirement actually going to exist? You know what? I'd rather get there and realize that it did exist and then get to the end, put my money in it and realize that it did exist, instead of not putting money towards it and realizing it did exist.
Wow.
So I would say, yes, take care of yourself and live mindfully in the process. So
My only comment on that, I think it was Albert Einstein, that said about compounding interest, said it was the 8th wonder of the world. And that's a mathematician. That's like a genius. And this idea in banks, right? They build skyscrapers downtown because they figured out how to make compounding interest work for them and hurt for you. So credit cards, there's a high interest rate.
Right.
Car loans, there's an interest rate. Even things like loans, like student loans, mortgages. Compounding interest is working for them. And retirement, investing in your future is one of the ways that compounding interest, that eighth wonder of the world, can help work for you and work for your future. And the seventh, the last thing,
Wrapping it up.
this is actually the season of life that we could speak to most recently, is competing goals. Like, we met with our family's financial advisor not too long ago. Like, it was the beginning of a new year, 2022. So we went over expenses, goals, all that stuff. And we were just like, hey, look. He goes, well, what's on the future? And we're like, well, we're trying to save for a fence in our backyard, just a little bit of upgrade, some safety, just different things. And then the second thing, we're trying to save for a minivan. And gosh, there's something else that we're saving for.
There was 3 things.
Oh, you know what it is?
Yeah.
It's the hot tub, right?
Yeah.
And so we can't do them all today.
A getaway.
And we're not really in the season of travel or vacations as a family. We got littles. But one of the things that we would want, we talked about need it, want it, or deserve it. We don't deserve it and we don't need it, but we'd want it. That'd be the hot tub. That'd be nice someday, more of a luxury, but we're trying to save for it. And then the most immediate is probably the fence, because we can do it ourselves.
Right.
And maybe have some friends help us with the labor. But the one that maybe long-term might serve our family's needs as we grow the best and travel to out-of-state family and different things is the minivan. But we are competing, or our goals are competing.
Finances are competing, right?
Yeah, it's like we want to do it all, but we can't.
Right.
So it's like we're saving, and then it's kind of prioritizing. But this idea, the seventh thing of how to have the career mindset, is to recognize that it's okay to give yourself grace and patience, because we can't do it all, and we can't do it overnight.
Right. And I would also say, like I talked about in the last episode, like, we don't need to be living a life where our parents are at. If they're 40, 50, 60s and they have 2 homes and they're living in their snowbirds or grandparents, and you look at them, you're like, that's where I want to be. And you're 22 listening to this. Listen, there are 22-year-olds who may be able to feasibly do that, but I would say the average American cannot. So just being mindful, like, when we have those competing goals, we have those dreams, aspirations, and desires, God doesn't put those in our heart to tease us. I think he puts it in, we can put those things in our heart, and it's a reality check of like, okay, how would this serve God's kingdom? How is this serving me? And what does that look like? Does my stuff own me, or do I own my stuff? And so just being mindful of, like, we don't have to have that 50-year-old desired home that we want, the dream home, at age 22 or 24. So don't get discouraged where you're not. Look at where you are. Steward those 7 things. Where am I living? What job am I going to have? Meal planning and prepping, that's going to change. Some expenses actually go away, and some kick into gear. So wait. You got to look at the chiropractor, the massage. Look at those packages that your employer is offering you. And then if you're 26 and beyond, you're going to have to start saving for retirement, if not sooner, if you can.
That's good.
And then 7th is those competing goals. So just filtering through all those different layers. Don't feel defeated. Feel encouraged. And maybe today you're just like, I don't even know how to feel encouraged because my faith is in the world. It's not in God. Like, I don't know who's God, it's Jesus, or whoever talked about finances 2,000 years ago even was. Hey, we just want to provide an opportunity. If you are curious about who Jesus Christ is, what he did for you, and how you can step into relationship with him, click the button. We're going to have it on the link for you. It says, I said yes to Jesus, right? Yep. And they're going to have your next steps of what you can do. We want to be in contact with you, so you can direct message us or let us know how this podcast has been speaking to you, or how you've been learning, or what you've been able to apply. And you can do that through direct messaging us. And just, I do just want to share, especially this, about the gospel.
Yeah, I think the way to conquer competing goals, right? The way to conquer competing goals is contentment. It's contentment. And I think that true contentment is recognizing that I'm doing better than I deserve because somebody actually paid it all for me.
Right.
I love what Greg Laurie says the gospel in a sentence is Jesus paid a debt he did not owe because I owed a debt that I could not pay.
So good.
Are you kidding me? That's the gospel right there. Jesus came and paid it all. He paid a debt that he didn't even owe. What? Because I owed a debt that I would never be able to earn or deserve or scrap together. No amount of scrappiness, no amount of human effort could compare to the everlasting grace and mercy of Jesus, who was a sinless man and died in my place on a cross. And he conquered death through burial, dead in a tomb for 3 days, resurrection, ascended, and he now sits at the right hand of the Father.
And I would say with that, some things, people say nothing in this world is free. Guess what? There's only one thing that is free, and that is a personal relationship with Jesus. That's the one free thing. There's no contingency plan. Yes, we do have to learn and become more like Christ in that process, and we learn that as we say yes. It doesn't happen overnight, but that is the one free thing. There's nothing you can do to make God love you less, and there's nothing you can do to make God love you more. We are all equal in the eyes of God when it comes to his love and his abundant grace.
And it wasn't free.
Right.
It wasn't free. Jesus said things like this. He demonstrated with his life that things of great value were worth a high cost. And he paid the ultimate cost for you and for me. And I'm grateful. And now that is that free, undeserved, unearned, unmerited favor and grace and mercy of Jesus. That while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So I'm grateful. I pray you're grateful. If you're on YouTube and you stumbled across this video, can you just type "I'm grateful" into the chat? And if you want to respond to the gospel message of Jesus, put your faith in him, you can do that on FYI-podcast.com. You can DM us to let us know. And if you have a follow-up question about faith, life, or adulting, maybe it's related to the Money and Finances mini-series, we'll be doing a couple more weeks of this, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, until next time.
It's Mike and Josiah signing off. Thanks, guys.